Welcome back to Season 3 of my podcast. I am Amanda Blackwood, the survivor. As many of you know, I wrote my autobiography as a survivor of human trafficking called Custom Justice. For those of you who didn't know, now you do. Keeping in line with that, this entire season is going to be focused on interviewing other trauma survivors who did or plan to write about their own experiences as trauma survivors and how they overcame their past. Get ready to hear from some truly incredible people. Please hang on for a moment through this brief advertisement. This is what currently pays for the show. Of course, I will also take donations through PayPal to keep the show running, or you can show support by a simple book purchase. I have quite a few out there. Just look for books by Amanda Blackwood on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Your purchase does go to helping to support local organizations that help fight human trafficking also. Good morning, and thank you for calling, Bianca. How are you?
Good morning, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I'm super excited. You guys, I have on with me today Bianca Ambrosio. She was almost trafficked when she was a kid. She's currently writing a novel on the story, but she did actually publish a blog post about this experience too. And I'm super excited to talk to you, Bianca. I know, I'm a survivor of human trafficking, so we've got this unspoken connection, I think.
Yes, we do.
So let's start this out with a little bit of the good stuff. We'll get into the bad stuff here in a minute, but where did you grow up and what kind of an overview? What was your family life like?
I grew up in Howard Beach, Queens, in New York City. It's a very Italian neighborhood, a lot of mafia presence there. My father was in prison when I was born, actually. My mother and my father had been dating since they were in high school. They were in their early 20s. So while he was out of prison, because he had a drug addiction, while he was out of prison for a few months or a few weeks, I'm not sure, she conceived me, then he went back to prison. And they got married while my father was in prison. So they got married in prison. My mother was 8 months pregnant with me.
Wow.
So he was due to get out in another year or two. And she was hoping that things would turn around. He was a very handsome young man, very intelligent. He recently passed away about almost a year ago. But he had a bad thank you. But he had a bad addiction to angel dust, unfortunately, and he grew up sort of like as a street kid, in the streets of Queens and around a lot of tough guys. So I had a troubled childhood. I grew up with my very Italian Sicilian grandparents, strict, old-fashioned. They did their best, but my mother was in and out of my life. She wanted to become an actress, and she kind of used to put me in some dangerous situations because she was naive at the time, and she was desperate for fame, I think maybe to get back at my father, like to show him, like, look at what I've become. After he got out of prison, he went back to drugs and he, was unfaithful. And that's why they ended up divorcing. Right. It was about like a week or two after he got out. He just went right back.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that had to be hard for you as a kid. How old were you when all this stuff was going on?
So when my father got out of prison, I was a little less than 2 years old. And he went right. I don't remember any of this. It was told to me. My mother ended up moving on and finding somebody else. She moved out of the house when I was around 2 to move in with her boyfriend. And then she would just sort of visit on the weekends. And my father and I maintained a telephone relationship until we had a falling out and when I was in junior high school, and then we reconnected later on when I was in college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hats off to you for, overcoming all of that and getting through it, but also for reconnecting with your dad. That's something that I've had a really hard time with myself as trying to reconnect with my parents after what I grew up with. So yeah. I get that. What all kinds of trauma have you had to overcome through all of this? I mean, watching your parents and watching all of that, how did it translate into serious trauma in your own life?
Well, I had very bad abandonment issues. I had an insecure attachment with my parents. Now that I'm a parent myself, I know more about attachment and to have, my parents in and out of my life coming and going, that was traumatic for me.
Yeah.
That led me to form, relationships with narcissists and, narcissists and people with borderline personality disorder. So
Wow.
I ended up going on to, have, be sucked into sort of these people that were like, "You're amazing, you're the best." Yeah, whatever. And then once they got you into their web, they would either, cheat on you or, a friend would date the guy that you were go behind your back. And so it started with that. It started with these really toxic friendships or friends that were verbally abusive to me. And just because I wanted to be accepted in junior high school and high school, I would still latch on to these people because they were giving me attention.
Yeah.
They were very controlling of me, very bossy of me. Then I
Right.
ended up heavily getting into drinking in high school. I went to a performing arts high school, LaGuardia in Manhattan, and there was it was very fast. Some kids were doing cocaine already, some kids, a lot were
Oh,
drinking in the bathrooms. Even during class, we would drink. So I was mostly into drinking. I started drinking a lot in high school in the bathrooms, cutting class. Um, I was I was moving really fast for my age. I was already in high school. Instead of, bonding with my immediate family, I thought my friends were my family. I wanted to be
yeah.
out of the house on the cell phone, um, all hours of the night clubbing and, with these people that were not very nice to me. They were pretty toxic with me. Um, and then I ended up being date raped when I was in high school because it's not my fault, I know now, but I I, I feel that my trauma led me to seeking so much outside of the home, which led me to trusting too easily, which led to the situation of somebody, a close friend of mine at the time who was not really a friend, taking advantage of me and drugging me.
Wow.
Mhm. And that's when I sort of started to have to heal from the trauma and realize who are my friends? What kind of friends do I have? Who can I trust? Um, and I started to rebuild relationships with my mother and my grandparents, but I still wasn't securely attached to them. I still didn't feel like I felt like I still had a void. So
Right.
I con
Yeah.
I continued to, get involved with toxic people.
Yep. It's kind of a road for those who have that kind of early childhood trauma.
Yeah.
We end up seeking that acceptance and that love from wherever we can get it. And a lot of times it's in really bad places.
Yeah.
Um, so you said you were almost trafficked as a child. Can you tell me about that? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes. So my mother found a movie audition in the Backstage newspaper. It was called Betty Rooney. She figured out later that anybody was able to put an audition notice or a casting call in the Backstage, but she thought because it was in the Backstage that it was legitimate. So
Mm,
she was not yet in SAG and AFTRA, which is the union for acting. And they wanted our pictures, and then they were like, "Okay, you're perfect." Then they wanted our passports, and she kind of went behind my grandparents' back. They were very against this. They had a bad feeling, so she got our passports. And as I remember it, I remember her being really excited, telling everybody, "We're starring in a movie. We're starring in a movie." And talking to me about it, that we're gonna be in a movie. We're gonna film in a location, a different faraway location. If my grandpa me going, will I still go? Will I, go against it? I was living with them. So, was I with her or was I with them? It was kind of a tug of war. And
right.
because my mother was not really a mother to me, she was more like a sister. She would come and go, but I really felt like I felt more connected to her. She was young, she was fun, she was creative. She exposed me to the arts. I was very artistic.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted to go with her. I wanted to do the movie. I was 4 years old. I saw nothing of it. I didn't think it was anything bad, but my whole family was nervous. So it was kind of a rabbit hole. Then we're gonna go here. First, they wanted to go to Jamaica. Then they wanted to go to somewhere in like Thailand. My mother is not 100% either Thailand or Japan. It was one of those. Then we're gonna go here, and they weren't being 100% forthcoming. Um, my mother couldn't figure out what agency this was. I mean, it was a
Mm.
total scam. But they were gonna have us. So basically, they were gonna have us get on the plane with them, and then they were gonna take us to whatever country to be trafficked. Like they were gonna use me, um, and my mother, like use me um, against my mother, so that they could, use her for sex, whatever
Wow.
they wanted to do with her or me. I mean, so what happened was she was set. We were ready to go. She had our bags packed. Like she thought we were gonna kind of leave in the middle of the night. But a lot of people kept talking to her and saying that it was a bad idea. So she at the time worked for my aunt as a hairdresser at her hair salon on the Upper East Side. And there were a lot of well-known people, journalists, um, lawyers, very rich people who went to my aunt's hair salon. So there was like this billionaire woman, Mrs. White, Shelby White. She, donates to NYU, and she worked for the New York Times, and she was an investigative journalist, but she's very wealthy. She's still alive. Um, so she did some investigating. So she called a few people. She called the backstage. She called a few, and then she figured it out. She said, "This has been happening a lot lately." She said, "What they do is, this is not legitimate. This is not a real casting call. Anybody's allowed to submit to the backstage. They get young, vulnerable women with children, and then they traffic you. They get you on a plane, and then it's whatever. They use you. They use your daughter." Um,
Wow.
and that's it. That would have been the end of you, she said, really. So thanks to Mrs. White, we were not trafficked. My mother was not listening to anybody. She was she was sort of the mentality of people are jealous of me. They want to sabotage my career. They don't believe in me. I'll prove them wrong. But
Yeah.
yeah, it would, but to a dangerous point in this situation. And
Yes,
she was really,
absolutely.
and she was really depressed after that. I remember sort of, she was very down.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was her dream, and she came so close, she thought, to having her dream come true, and all of a sudden have the carpet yanked out from under her and realize that she put you in danger, she put herself in danger, and that she's probably talked to and associated with people who are now being trafficked.
Yeah,
That has to weigh huge on somebody's heart and brain. That's
exactly.
that's
Yeah,
awful.
it
Yeah.
really was. It was a close call. I'm just glad that it didn't happen because I don't know where
Yeah.
I'd be today.
Yeah, me too. Now, the average lifespan of somebody in trafficking is only 7 years, so you might not be here today.
Horrible. Wow.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Um, so what helped you to heal from all of the trauma that you've been through?
So what helped me to heal was I ended up going to therapy in college, and I talked about a lot. And then I close friendships with people who actually cared about me, who actually were real and authentic. My relationship with God, I'm a Christian, my relationship with Jesus helped me to heal, to realize, there is love. There is a higher power who loves me unconditionally. And I don't need to depend on anybody to feel good about myself, to feel loved.
Yeah,
Just prayer. I'm still not 100, I'm still not healed, but I ended up developing severe OCD, intrusive thoughts. This was a few years ago. I did EXRP therapy, which is exposure and response prevention therapy.
uh-oh.
So that was very helpful for anybody who has OCD, intrusive thoughts. Um, it really helped me to learn that my anxiety, my fears, I don't have to live with trying to avoid so much in my life. Not everything is dangerous. Because I was walking around life feeling like everything was dangerous, and It's because I've almost, I've had bad things happen to me and a lot of close calls. But some things are irrational, like irrational fears of driving, irrational fears of everybody's bad when, it's good to form, positive relationships with the trusted community, but trusted, not, just anybody, as you know.
Right.
Some people are manipulative. Some people really are a threat, but
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. That's
some-
awesome. I haven't heard of EXRP. I've done EMD therapy, but I've never heard of EXRP. That probably will be really helpful for some people listening. That's
yes,
amazing.
yes, I did EMD also, and that helped me a lot. And then I did prolonged exposure for trauma. And prolonged exposure is you repeat, basically, you write down the trauma. You write down what happened. I mean, it's more in depth. The psychologist would better explain it. And then you sort of repeat the story because we bury it so far. And we're so traumatized that we can't even think about it almost without dissociating, even blacking out, even just like getting angry, upset, anxious. So the more you expose yourself to the trauma, it kind of drifts away from you. It doesn't affect you as much, the memory of it.
Interesting. I wonder if maybe that's why I was able to finally overcome it, is because of the public speaking and stuff. When I first started, I was terrified, and I exposed myself to it multiple times over and over, talking about the trauma. And I wonder if bringing that up so many times would be considered a form of prolonged exposure and helped me to get through it. Never
It
even
it
thought
de
about
it
that.
probably did because, you feel better, like, after talking about it, right? So,
Right.
you expose yourself to it, you're not burying it, and you're facing it, and it's kind of coming out for it's almost like it's really buried deep, and it just sort of comes to the surface, and it grows, and it moves on. That's how I visualize it. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll always be affected by it, but it helps you,
Yeah.
face.
That's amazing. It makes so much sense.
Yes. I mean, it's extremely difficult because when I was doing it, I was like, "This is torture." I was like, I I almost don't recommend it to some people. You have to be in a stable place where you're able to handle it, because it just a lot of memories start flooding back, and it can make you irritable, angry, depressed, anxious. So people really need a lot of support when they do this, but it's known to be very effective, and I did it through University of Pennsylvania.
Very cool. So, what are the top three things that you personally have done to help yourself to move past all of the trauma in your background?
So without therapy, etc.
Yeah.
Me personally, writing is probably the number one thing that allowed me to face my trauma because my first book that I wrote, which I'm currently editing,
Mhm.
um, it regarded, my relationship with my mother and almost being trafficked, and also my relationship with my friend who was sexually abused as a child. Because I don't think a lot of people even realize that men are raped too. They're sexually abused too. Um, and I've met I've had relationships with people who are sexually abused as children, men, and I think, that that also, that affected me because, the relationship has it's hard for people to open up. It's hard for people to trust. I can't trust, they can't trust. We both have trauma. So I actually incorporated that into my first book, Gracie. She and her childhood best friend, she uncovers that he's being sexually abused at home while she's going through a traumatic situation with her mother and her abandoning her and coming and going and her father being in prison. So writing all of this out really helped me. Reading about trauma, reading about why do we feel this way, like how does attachment with your caregiver, with your parent affect who you are. um, and
Very,
and I would say, you know, trusted relationships with others, close bonds, a
very
community,
cool.
mhm. Supporting each other, right? Supporting people who
Right.
support you, you support them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to mirror all of that. I learned so much writing about my story, and I learned even more reading about other people's stories or hearing stories like your own, and then building bonds with people like my best friend, my husband, people that are important, and they get my story. They don't have to understand it, but they get it.
Yes, and they support you and they're there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do you celebrate your little wins in life? When you do something great, when you move beyond something, when you realize that you've overcome another piece of the background, how do you celebrate?
I celebrate by, I really like community. I really like meeting friends, going out to dinner, going to the beach, taking a walk, taking a dance class, um, something fun with people that I really care about. I really like getting together with people.
I
I've
love
always been
that.
social. I've always been social. I like happiness, I like joy, I like celebration, I like supporting people, whether it's their birthday, whether it's they're getting married, a baby being born. I just like to celebrate with others, whether it's just let's go take a walk together, let's just get lunch. I feel like that's how I've celebrated in my life.
That's awesome. And so many people, once they get through a trauma, they're scared of going out and doing things and celebrating. And I love talking to people about how they celebrate that kind of stuff. That's really cool.
Yes.
Um, so, who inspires you the most and why? It can be anybody on the planet.
Who inspired me the most and why? Well, um, I would say my friend Pilar, my best friend, she inspired me a lot. She's a very strong woman. She brought me to God and I was already a Christian, but she showed me more about how I really, that I deserve love. I deserve a good relationship with God. Not a fearful one, and she's older than I am. She's a writer too, but I would say she inspires me a lot because she showed me that a good friend does exist.
That's cool.
That helped me in so many ways, and just to overcome a lot of trauma. Just to have a good friend that was always there for me,
I
and that
love that
allowed me
she
to
was,
have other good friends. That allowed me to trust other friends and meet other good people.
yeah. I love that she was the one who brought you to having a better relationship with God. I'm a Christian myself,
Yeah.
and I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my favorite things about my husband was that he helped me to form a closer relationship with God too. He
Oh,
got me
great.
back into church, and it's just awesome. He's amazing. Um,
Oh, that's great. I'm so happy for you.
uh, so, what's one thing that you wish you could tell someone who's going through something similar to what you went through?
I would tell them that they matter. It's not their fault. They matter, and that there are people out there that that will be there for them, that will care about them, that will value them just for who they are. That there is definitely help out there to help anybody with their trauma, anxiety, depression. There are good treatments out there, prolonged exposure, EXRP, psychotherapy, EMDR, as you did and I did as well. There are treatments out there. Nobody has to feel like there is no hope. I know we can feel hopeless at times. It's very difficult. But if you just hold on, turn the corner, there will be help for you. I know I felt very hopeless at times. There was always something right around the corner that changed my life. It could just be one day you meet somebody and your life changes for the better. One book. So I would tell people out there to always have hope, always have faith.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Um, so you did mention your book, Gracie. You're currently working on editing that, but you do have a blog out there available, right? Where people can go and read some of your stuff.
Yes, I have a blog. It's Bianca Rose Writes, and it's at Medium. I believe I gave you the link to it.
Yes, and I will make sure that I include that in the description of the podcast so that people can see that. And it's when the podcast airs, it automatically feeds that link over to my social media website and my own blog and all that stuff too. So people should be able to link directly to your blog to be able to read your story. which is just awesome. I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
Um, and do you have a passage that you would like to share, or would you rather skip that?
Yeah, so I'll just read the last part of the blog post.
Okay.
Well, you have the ending, but it's leading up to that. Mhm. So when my mother barged into the house, demanding my passport, saying we were to fly across the world to star in a movie about a dog in the window, Nona refused to hand over my life. You can have your passport, she told my mother, but the minute you try and take my granddaughter out of this house, I will kill you. My great aunts and uncles, my cousins and family friends all begged my mother to leave me out of her plans. They never let their eyes off me. On New Year's Eve, after watching the ball drop on the television, and after my mother exclaimed that 1996 would be her best acting year yet, prompting my family to argue with her about the movie abroad that would for sure make us disappear, my great aunt asked me, Bianca, be honest. You won't get on a plane with your mother to do this movie, will you? My mother looked at me with expectation gleaming in her eyes. Yes, I said, I am going with my mother wherever she wants.
Wow. Wow. I'm so glad Miss White stepped in and changed everything for you guys.
She really did. Thank you. And I also
That's
wanted
huge.
to mention that I'm starting to write a book on Kindle Vaya. It's under a pen name, Scarlett Amore. It's called Bella Notte.
Oh, very cool. See, if you can send me a link to that in email, I'll make sure I include that too in the description so people can start checking that out.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
And one last question. I love asking this of people before I let them go. What's one thing that you love about yourself that's not based on your physical appearance?
I love my kind heart. I feel that I have a pure heart. I care about others and I look for joy.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that about you. You are such an incredible person and such an inspiration. I love that you overcame all of this and you're doing everything you can to help other people now and writing about your experiences. You are remarkable, and I hope you know that.
Oh, you too. I really admire you and your writing and you're so talented and you're so helpful and strong. Right back
Thank
at
you.
you.
If you ever decide that you want to come back on the show, just reach out to me and let me know. I'd love to have you back on, maybe once your book is released. We
Okay.
can always kind of do a recap. You can talk a little bit more about it and reveal a few more secrets, that kind of stuff. But I'm
Cool,
here
cool.
for you,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
of course. Thank you, Bianca. We will talk soon, I have no doubt.
Yes, thank you. Talk soon. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.